So get ready for an action-packed episode with today's guest, Bec McFarland. I've known Bec for quite a few years, and I'm always in awe of how Bec approaches life and her business as well. So Bec is the founder and CEO of Pop Your Business and Pop Your Career, and she's the host of a conference, the Pop Your Business conference that we're definitely going to talk about. She's a self-confessed nerd at heart and thoroughly geeks out on all the behind-the-scenes business stuff that most people, including me, find to be a major irritation. And I've completed a couple of Bec's programs and also done coaching with her to help me deal with all those things that cause irritation. And let me tell you, she is just amazing and helps make life so much easier for certainly me in business. But Bec isn't just about business. There are so many strings to her bow that I'm super excited to find out about today. So welcome, Bec. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
It's good to be on this side. Normally, this time each week, you're coaching me, and now I get to ask you all the questions. So what we'll do just to start off with, just so the listeners get a sense of who you are, what stage of life are you at? Tell us just a snapshot, and then we'll go back and find out about how you got to this stage in life.
Yeah, sure. So, sorry, Catherine.
Oh, she's just having the chokes now. That's all right. It always happens, doesn't it? We had a pre-plan and we've been chatting for quite a while. Give me the sign if we need to pause.
No, you're all good. Of course, as soon as I go to speak, all of a sudden I just can't breathe. I'm at quite an interesting stage of life. So I'm 39 and in January of 2024, I'm turning the big 40, and it's not something that I'm super excited about. I think I've always had a really interesting relationship with the concept of aging and, you know, where I'm sort of at in my life's journey. I think when I was younger, I often got a little bit paranoid about the fact that, you know, like I'm young, I don't have, you know, as much experience. Why would people listen to me and that kind of thing? And, you know, over the last probably 10 years, I've really gotten over that and gone, no, I know who I am. I know what I'm talking about, and that's all good. But I feel like I'm about to sort of step into this next stage, and it's a little bit unknown.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I'm a number of laps around the sun ahead of you. And I remember that same time coming into my 40s, I like even numbered years, like numbers. So odd number years, I don't feel as good for whatever weird reason. So I was actually really looking forward to 40 because that was an even numbered year. But I was also very trepidatious about, oh, what does that actually mean? Because 40, it sort of was like, oh my God, it felt old.
Yeah. And it's kind of weird because, you know, I consider myself to be quite young at heart. You know, I've got the colourful hair and I always, you know, wear rad clothes and things like that. And, you know, I love my daggy jokes and all of that kind of thing. But it was really sort of in the last couple of years. So my husband is about 4 years older than me, and as he has hit those birthdays, it's kind of left me with this feeling of like, God, how did I end up with such an old man? Like, this is, you know, it's kind of like, and then I have to snap myself back into it and go, honey, you aren't 20 anymore.
And then hearing yourself say those things, it's interesting. Do you know what? 44 was my superpower number. So I'm 57 now. But in my mind's eye, I'm forever 44. That's when I think I came into my peak. I think I'm continually coming into my peak. But that 44 feels really good. So it's interesting, isn't it, those milestone birthdays?
Yeah, and just the way that we react to it, because I think it's funny that you said, like, you feel more comfortable with the even numbers, because I remember when I turned 30, I was sort of prepared to feel not great, and I was okay. But I'm telling you, my 31st birthday, I stayed in bed and cried all day.
Because you're into that new decade.
Yeah. It's like,
I
what's
reckon
happening?
Yeah, I reckon life's a bit like a bottle of wine, though, that it gets better with age. And for me, really, age is just a number. I don't feel my chronological age.
Mm,
I don't, age is it's a funny concept, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. Where did you grow up? So you live in Canberra. So we both live
Yes.
in Canberra. Have you always lived here?
So I was born in Canberra and my dad was in the Air Force. So when I was 1 or 2, he got transferred to Williamtown in
Yep.
Newcastle.
Yeah.
And so I lived there in Raymond Terrace for about 8 or 9 years. Which was really great. Like I had a wonderful childhood. My parents are both amazing people and really, really supportive. I've got a younger sister who's 4 years younger than me and, really, really enjoyed growing up there. I had, I guess, an interesting, maybe a little bit of a different childhood in a way. When I was in first or second grade, my parents were notified that I was gifted and talented, which I've just put
Oh, cool.
into
Wow. Inverted commas.
inverted
Yeah,
commas.
quotes. Yeah.
And at the time, what that meant for me was that I was moved out of like the standard classroom and placed in like the special kids class, right? The gifted and talented program. And it was really, really cool in a way because we had kids of all different age groups.
Yeah.
At one stage we had like, children from grades 3 to 6 all in the one class. And a lot of the learning that we did was really different. So it wasn't just like normal curriculum or just textbook work and things. We would work on really exciting and creative projects. And, if we were feeling stifled in the classroom, we could say to the teacher, I want to take my maths book out into the playground and sit on the play equipment and do my maths. And the teachers are like, yeah, cool, no worries. I had really found around that sort of, I think it was sort of grade 5, that I really thought that I wanted to be a teacher. And they gave me the flexibility to actually go and spend some time in a kindergarten classroom. And I actually planned out a lesson. And the teachers went out for coffee and
Wow.
left me in charge of 2 separate classes. And I just remember, like having so much fun with that and then having the freedom to, go and get involved. Like I remember I painted the kindergarten classes dollhouse, and that was like one of my school projects. I'd just toddle off from my class and go over there and hang out. And I did that for a few weeks. And, so it was a really interesting educational journey. I think that, for me, it was really positive. And, it makes sense now in like my older years, as I've since been diagnosed with ADHD. But looking back on that, I see so many really amazing positives about the way that I was taught and a way that I was given that freedom to learn. But I also see the downsides of what occurred during that time, and being taken away from standard education and put into this separate classroom. We were almost taught that we were, in a league of our own. Like, I think there was a little bit of elitist kind of stuff going on. And so when my dad got transferred in the Air Force back to Canberra for me to go to year 6, I was like completely a fish out of water.
Was that a shock? Was that a big shock? Because a different system?
It was probably like the worst thing that happened in my childhood. So I'd left that environment where I was very safe and secure, and I'd been taught that it was okay to be myself and to express myself in the way that felt really good to me. And then I went back into, what you would class as like that more standard or traditional education. And of course, at a time for year 6, when kids have already got all their friendship groups and, really being an outsider. And, I'm quite introverted. So in year 6, I wanted to spend my lunchtimes reading books, and I would go to the library and just look for the thickest novel that I could find, because I just wanted something that I was going to be able to sink my teeth into and really spend some time. But that really led to the beginning of my journey with bullying. And I was very severely bullied all through year 6. Unfortunately, I then went to the connected high school. I was bullied through year 7, through year 8. In year 8, I transferred to a private school here in Canberra and continued to get bullied there.
Oh, I knew you were going to say
Yeah.
that. Fuck. Yeah.
And, you know, the reasons that I was getting bullied were, firstly, things that were outside of my control. So, you know, I had acne, so I was pizza face, and, you know, I was overweight, so, you know, I was constantly called fat, and, you know, but I also had short hair, so I was obviously a lesbian.
Okay.
And obviously, you know, that is the worst possible thing that you could be, you know, and so I really got picked on because of that. But then it was, you know, all of the things that are unique to me that make me special, the type of music that I listen to, the way that I was naturally good at school. You know, I would often write an essay on the bus on the way to school in the morning and hand it in like handwritten, almost like on a serviette. And I would still get like 19.5 out of 20. And what that means to the kids in high school is that I was obviously sleeping with my female teacher who was in her 60s.
Oh my God, Bec, there's so much there. And coming from when you were saying that your childhood was great, mum and dad, the upbringing, schooling up to year 5 was amazing, like really empowering stuff. And then that change of environments, and then kids are shits, aren't they?
Yeah.
That whole cruelty. Like I experienced bullying for different reasons. I mean, pizza face, fat, you know, kids bullied me because my mother died.
Yeah,
Like,
it's unreal.
you know, just dumb, crazy stuff. But, and it's interesting, isn't it, that even changing environments to a private school, that it still happens. And, you know, what are your takeaways from that? Like, what are the things that you as an adult, a nearly 40-year-old, can look back on that and sort of reflect? What are your takeaways from that?
It makes me really sad, to be honest, and especially sad that, you know, all these years later, I'm still talking to parents who have got children that are going through similar things. I don't know what can be done about it, but something needs to be done. You know, without sort of wanting to trauma dump and tell you my whole life story, you know, I have very genuine beliefs that it was the way that I was treated in school and the way that I was bullied so relentlessly that is part of the reason that I then ended up in an abusive relationship at 19. Because, you know, I had been told for so many years how useless and worthless I was. I had been called every name under the sun. You know, I even had people, when the internet started, you know, people putting things on the internet about me, you know, in relation to my appearance or, you know, like all different things. And so by the time I got to that point at 19, when, you know, somebody showed an interest in me, you know, like I really thought that was the best that I could do. And even through that relationship, you know, there was a sense of this is what I deserve because I've been told this. And, you know, not just once or twice, but like every single day, all the way from year 6 right through to year 10. I went to a different school for year 11 and 12 here in Canberra. We've got the college system and, you know, I went back to a public college and I didn't get bullied in college, I think, because of the fact that I really just alienated myself. And I just stuck to myself. I didn't really make friends. I just hung out on my own and just tried to fly under the radar. So by the time I got to that point where, you know, I'm graduating year 12, I'm ready to go out into the world and start making decisions, you know, the decision that I ended up making was I have no self-worth. You know, I am a worthless human. And you know, if I've got this other person who's expressing an interest in me, whilst at the same time, you know, delivering abuse of every kind, you know, there really wasn't that belief that I could get out of that situation, or even if I did, you know, what my life would look like.
Yeah, and do you know what? It's so relentless, isn't it? That when you're in those impressionable years, and that, you know, what you believe about yourself, and it's interesting, it's almost like that fork in the road, because up until year 5, it was this almost this you said a little bit of elite, you know, built, you know, your self-esteem was so high that it was just like invincible. And then coming in and hearing that relentless, that you're not good, you're not worthy, and all the cruel things that kids say, and then that becomes a belief, and then you settle for what you think you're worth. And I see a lot of women that I work with, you know, similar, not different stories, but similar outcomes, that they don't believe in who they are, and they settle for stuff less than they really truly want or deserve. How did you get out of that? Where did the bit come? Because you're now, for those of you that are listening, and some of you will be following on YouTube and seeing us, Bec has green and orange hair, and this week, other weeks it's bright pink or silver, wearing a beautiful, beautiful bright coloured dress. And her backdrop is, you've just painted this new beautiful colourful backdrop in your office. You come across as confident, and that you're comfortable in your own skin. Now, whether that's completely true or not, we'll delve a little bit deeper. But where did the change happen? Where did you? So fast forward, did you end that relationship with?
Yeah, I did.
Loser? Yeah.
So I was with him for 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
And, you know, without sort of going into too much detail, there was eventually an incident where it wasn't just impacting me, it was going to impact somebody else. And I had a lot of fear around that. And in that moment, just, I guess, to clarify, because I know that we'll likely talk about this later, it was an animal. And, you know, I was very, very concerned for that animal's welfare, particularly based on some actions that this human had previously taken. So in that moment, all I cared about was that animal and getting that animal to safety. And for myself, you know, that was secondary. So on the day that happened, you know, I grabbed the animal, threw it in my car, and literally left with the clothes that were on my back. I didn't even have my wallet or, you know, like any of my personal belongings. I just got straight out of there. And it was then that I sort of, you know, had this realization that I can't keep doing this. You know, we had a lot of those sort of repeating patterns over the years, and you know, same sorts of things. And, you know, my parents and my loved ones, they were all powerless because no matter how much they told me, you know, you don't deserve this, you need to get out, he's a bad person, all of that kind of thing, like I just wasn't able to get the message. And on this day, I left. It was very, very difficult. So at the time, you know, I was in my early 20s. I just moved straight back in with my parents. And, you know, like, again, they were incredible and very, very supportive. But it was at this time, I think, that my journey really began in terms of trying to figure out who I was and trying to reconcile that all of that behavior that I had tolerated was not appropriate, and it was not acceptable, and it was not what I deserved. And interestingly enough, or perhaps not, I really thought that the key for me to unlock my own self-worth was another person. And so, so I spent a long time really, you know, like trying to find myself a boyfriend, trying to find a relationship, because I really felt like it was that external validation that I needed in order to be able to begin to move on and begin to value myself. And this went on for quite a few years, and I was always disappointed. I never
funny,
yeah,
but yes.
Yeah. I didn't have any like serious relationships during that time, but I spent a long time looking, and it was just this feeling of like, I just need to find love. As part of this, I can't remember exactly what year it was. I think it was 2008. My best friend, Steve, he was living up in Brisbane, and he'd been going through a bit of a difficult time. And I remember just saying to my mum one day, I want to move to Brisbane and be with Steve. And mum was like, oh, okay, so what's holding you back? And I was like, well, like I've got a lease. I had an gorgeous apartment in the city. I had a really good job that was paying a great wage. I only had to work 4 days a week. I had all of this. And mum sort of went, yeah, but if you want to go. And within a week, I'd notified my landlord that I was leaving. I had notified my boss that I was leaving. I'd started to apply for jobs up in Brisbane, and I went. And it was really the first time that I'd ever lived like away from my parents properly. And, went to Brisbane, ended up getting a job that was sort of like actually outside of my industry. And again, fell into the same pattern. Like now that I'm not in Canberra and now that I'm in Brisbane, the pool of fishies is, even larger for me to try and find this person who's going to unlock what I've been looking for. And in 2010, I was online dating, and I, was chatting with a few different people, and I'd really gotten over the whole like, let's talk for ages online and then meet, because I found that I was meeting people and then, they weren't who
you get let down when you met them.
Yeah. And so I just felt like it was a waste of time.
Yeah.
And so I just sort of, I'd started just saying to people, look, like, do you want to just meet? Let's just meet. And my housemate at the time, she was on online dating as well, and she had booked herself in for a date to go out with someone for dinner. And so I was like, oh, well, if you're going out, then I better go out. So I jumped on and, found someone and said, hey, let's just go out for dinner. And we did. We went for dinner at the Coffee Club in Bulimba. And I went home that night and said to my housemates, I've just met the man that I'm going to marry.
Oh, I've just got big goosebumps now. I've got goosebumps. Yeah.
And I mean, I knew immediately, when I met my husband, and everything happened really quickly, like we moved in together pretty much straight away. And, within a year, I had said, look, let's move back to Canberra to be closer to my family. And, we did that. And then, we went to India to go and see his family, and we got engaged and, bought a house and did all of these things. Like, it all happened really, really quickly. But I think the lesson for me in that was that finally I'd found what I had been looking for all of these years. I'd found this person to love me. And still, I didn't love myself.
Yeah.
And it was like this penny drop moment of going, oh, okay, I actually can't rely on somebody else to fix me.
Yeah.
And that is then when the real work began. So you'll know, like, I'm a huge advocate of therapy. I've been in therapy for years, and I probably always will be. But, I've also looked at other many, many, many different other modalities to help me heal from the trauma that I'd experienced and to work through, everything that I needed to work through. And I think that doing that, but with the support of my husband, who is just the most incredible man that walks this earth, I was really, again, like, given the space to, like, reflect and introspect and take a moment to go, hang on, like, who am I and
Yeah.
what do I stand for
Yeah.
and what is important to me, and like, why was I put here on this earth?
Yeah.
And through that process, I've landed here. And, one of the comments that you made was, that I come across as being confident, really happy with myself. It's absolutely true.
Yeah.
I love myself sick.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's actually a little sickening. But I'm really happy with
Yeah.
who I am and what I've got to offer the world. And it feels really good to be in that place now.
Yeah. And it's interesting, isn't it, Bec? Like the stuff that went through, some big T trauma, some little T trauma, and the process of, getting that search of happiness. And I'm all about happiness, but for me, it's a byproduct of living my best life. I don't search for happiness. I'm about living a meaningful life, and all those things you said about, searching for who I am and why I'm on this earth and what do I stand for and how do I want to show up. Through all of that, happiness kind of comes. But one of the things I want to dip into there about that confidence and loving yourself sick, that doesn't mean that it's all roses and unicorns and everything's this, never-ending cycle of just gloriousness. There's still some downtimes, I'm assuming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And look, I mean, some of the things that I've been left with from those earlier experiences are, in the last couple of years, I've been diagnosed with complex PTSD,
Yes.
generalized anxiety disorder, and, adding those to my ADHD has, left me with a bag full of letters that I get to carry around. But some really interesting behavioral traits and little habits and nuances about the way that I am and about the way that I behave. And like, it's definitely not all roses and unicorns, and sometimes things do get really dark. At the end of 2020, I had a very, very difficult time. I had to have my gallbladder out, and that actually triggered my PTSD. And I spent a whole year after that really trying to get back on my feet. One of the things that I repeatedly said after that surgery was they took my confidence. And,
Interesting.
I really felt that, they'd cut me open, they'd taken my gallbladder out, and with it, they'd taken a whole bunch of other things that they weren't entitled to.
Yeah.
And, it took me a lot of time and a lot of working with expert practitioners to really start to rebuild myself after that and realize that that is not something that could have been taken away from me, but for whatever reason, it's hiding under the trauma that is then sort of layered on top. For now, though, what I'll say is I do have the mechanisms in place. I am medicated. I also, see my therapist regularly, and, I also, my energy healer and things like that. I'm super open to all sorts of different modalities. The dark days now are definitely not as dark as they have been in the past. And I think now there's also a part of me that kind of reconciles that feelings are meant to be felt, and that, we often categorize feelings as being good or bad feelings, but that's not necessarily the case. And that sometimes when we are feeling really shitty, there's something there for us to actually look into and figure out, what's going on? Why am I feeling like this?
Yeah.
And I know that you are a huge promoter of journaling, and, I myself absolutely love it because it's an opportunity for me to ask myself those, maybe silly questions like, why am I feeling like this today? And then really just, handing it over to my subconscious to let me know what's going on, like what's hovering around there deep under the surface. And then once we can dredge it all up, then we can do something about it.
Yeah,
And I
100% agree. And it's about recognizing, because I think all too often this was my pattern, was just to not feel the emotions.
Yeah.
And feeling it was not okay to be sad. It was not okay to be angry. And it was about just get on with life. And so what I'm doing is denying all those emotions. And I kind of equate it to like those blow up beach balls that if you push them under the water, you've got to put pressure to hold them down. And when you let them go, they fucking shoot up. Like you don't know where they're going to go. Emotions are like that. If you're trying to push them down, it's about recognizing them. And it's not good or bad. It's just we're putting meaning on it to say it's not okay to feel this. But for me, it's about when we have an emotion, it's like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Why am I feeling this? And for me, it's about bringing that part forward to be healed. If it needs to be, sometimes it just needs to be recognized. And sometimes it needs to be just sat in and allow yourself to feel like a misery guts, but not for too long. Like there needs to become a point where we just go, okay, enough of this misery guts, and let's just, who do I want to be and how can I show up as that person? So it is about recognizing the emotions, and also what you were saying there about having the tools and the support to help you navigate, because it's hard to do. Some of it's hard to do on your own. I go to different people for different things, and because a lot of it, I don't have the tools and resources because I'm part of it. I need somebody's external eyes to have a shining in on what's happening.
One of the tools that my therapist uses with me is called integrated family systems. And I really enjoy that approach, although I mean sometimes it's incredibly difficult. But it is actually like naming those different emotions and going in and talking to them and saying, like, why are you here? How old do you think I am? Like, what do you think I'm experiencing? What is your role here? And then being almost able to like reassure some of those parts that, hey, I'm actually okay. Like I am 39 now and I'm not still in that place. And, I appreciate you, but I don't really need you to protect me in this way. And I think that work is, incredibly revolutionary and, has really helped me to uncover some of the things that have been going on, not just in my personal life either, but also in business.
Yeah, it's the same. And one of the things that I've been working with recently is my gammy eye that I've got. And I've covered it up with makeup at the moment, but I found out it's a cyst on my eye.
Oh, wow.
And possibly might need surgery. But anyway, I've been doing some real work with what is it here for? And it could be like a bacterial infection, absolutely. That could be the place. But I also talk to that part of my body and what is it that I need to know. And what's been coming forward for me is about being under pressure and feeling the pressure. And I was doing some study this morning, and the bit that I was studying, it was about pressure energy centers, and that word pressure just jumped out off the page and said, this is your eye, you're under pressure. And it was about emotional pressure. So that just gave me some more clues. So I will absolutely work with the mainstream doctors, but I'll also do a lot of work around the metaphysical and the emotional. For me, it's about that combination. And when you're talking about therapists, healers, medication, to me, it's all part of the team to help be the best. And I don't have any judgment about any of that, but it's about getting support where you need support. I want to dive. I'm going to take this slightly differently, because one of the things I did want to ask you about, and we're fur mamas, we have a quite often when we're coaching online, there's a competition of snoring, and it's
That's
not
right.
between Bec and I, but it's between the dogs in the background. Whose dog does the loudest snoring. So, Bec, I know, and I possibly get a sense now that I didn't know why, but you are a rescuer of pups with special needs. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So, as soon as my husband and I bought our house, we knew that we wanted to get a dog.
Yeah.
And we went to the RSPCA and we found a beautiful girl who was an inspector dog. She'd actually been taken by the RSPCA away from her owner because of the fact that she'd been abused, and she was incredibly malnourished, you know, almost a skeleton. It was really like a very, very horrific situation. We weren't necessarily looking for a dog of her breed, or, you know, I think even at the time weren't necessarily looking for a dog with, like, you know, problems. But we met her, we fell in love with her, and we brought her home. And after that, so her name was Backup. She was named after the dog on Veronica Mars, because Veronica Mars is a private detective. Wherever she goes, she always takes Backup. And then we got Backup a friend who was Jasper. Jasper was a black dog who'd been at the RSPCA for, I think, nearly a year. Nothing necessarily wrong with him. He'd been, neglected, but people don't like black dogs. And apparently we found out they call it black dog syndrome, and that they are like so many percent less likely to be adopted because people have got this sort of preconceived idea about like black dogs being scary or evil or, you know, whatever. We had a brilliant time with Backup and Jasper. Unfortunately, they have both passed away, Jasper most recently. But, you know, over the years while we had them, you know, we also adopted some bearded dragons. And, you know, by this stage, we saw our pattern. We knew what we were up to. So when my husband said, let's get a bearded dragon, and we went over to the reptile shop, you know, they bring out this big bucket and it's got all the babies in it, and you sort of can go through and watch the way that they're interacting with each other and then pick the one that you want. And I'll never forget that at that moment he was looking in the bucket, and then he looked at the lady and said, where are the ones that nobody wants? Like they're all too perfect, you know, don't you have any, like, you know, others? And then she brought out another smaller tub with a few little babies in there, and he selected our Job, who was missing a foot and half of his tail. And, you know, again, like, we had a wonderful time with Job. Unfortunately, he had a neurological disorder and passed away. And, you know, since then we've had a number of bearded dragons come into our lives, and, you know, I've often found the ones that have got very rare disorders. Our last bearded dragon that passed away, her name was Lucky Lemon, and she actually had leukemia, which is like apparently the most ridiculously rare thing for bearded dragons to get leukemia, that there are doctors out there that have written papers on, you know, the rarity of it. But now we have got two beautiful dogs that we adopted through Life of Pikelet. They are a rescue organisation in Victoria that particularly specialise in rescuing dogs and other animals with neonatal birth defects. So we originally adopted Pudgy Pie. So she's a little over a year old. She's an XL American bully, although she was hand-reared from birth. So she'll never be quite as big as a traditional XL bully. But she has got a bilateral cleft lip, and that causes her no health issues whatsoever. It means that she looks a little bit funny, but she doesn't require surgery or, you know, any other different treatment. But unfortunately, dogs like Pudge are often euthanized at birth.
Because they're nobody,
Yeah, and, you know, there aren't a lot of vets or, you know, other medical professionals or even rescuers in Australia that are sort of equipped to deal with pups that have got defects like this. So yeah, usually they just get put to sleep. Whereas Callie from Life of Pikelet is one of 4 incredible rescuers here in Australia that actually, work to rehabilitate these dogs and get them any medical support that they need. So Pudgy's a very, very sensitive girl, but she's working with an incredible trainer at the moment to build her confidence. And since we've had Pudgy Pie, we also adopted Sassy. Now, Sassy is a British bulldog. She is about 7-8 months old and definitely in naughty puppy stage. I did say to my husband earlier, like, is she hungry or is she just an asshole? Because she is putting everything in her mouth that she possibly can. But she has got a grade 3-4 heart murmur. And so, fortunately, she was reared off her mother. And so, she'll grow to full size and all of that. She's a beautiful dog. Looking at her from the outside, you would never assume that there was, anything wrong with her at all. But because she had that heart murmur, she sort of doesn't meet the cut. And so she went in rescue. But she was there for 2 days, I think, because we saw the photo of her.
And you just took I remember that because I've got we adopted Boston, so he's a Kerry Blue Terrier. He's black, so I'm wondering if that's part of the reason.
Yeah,
he was very, very anxious, and we did a lot of work with a trainer for him, and he's come good. We've just had him for a year, and he's absolutely beautiful. And we've got my daughter's British Bulldog, Mabel. She's the snorer in the background. And I've locked her out today. Whenever I do a podcast, it's like, can't be in here, Mabel, because you just snore so loud. And our beautiful energy healer, Sarah Jensen, has been doing some energy work with Boston. Yeah. And I have to get back to her, but she has unleashed an adolescent, I wouldn't say a monster, but he is pushing the boundaries of a dog that has been very, very anxious, and it's been beautiful to see him feeling more confident, but he's pushing those boundaries. Like you talk about toddler, I've got teenager that is just like, don't tell me what to do. I'm doing my own stuff. So anyway, that's beautiful.
It's all in good fun though, isn't it?
It's all in good fun. Yeah.
I should just mention as well, I do also have the 2 bearded dragons. So we have got one Eastern and one Central. One of them is called Skittles and the other is Simon. So Simon. It would be remiss of me not to mention them. I'd hate for them to listen to the podcast and think that they've missed out. Forgotten.
What do you call them? Like the dogs are fur babies. What are the bearded dragons? Are they spiky babies? Or
so my best friend calls them scale babies.
Scale babies, yeah.
But he has also just recently, a couple of years ago, had a human child. And he said to me, it's so funny how everyone talks about fur babies. So he said, I'm going to start calling my kid a skin puppy see what other people think of that. Do.
Yeah,
so
interesting.
He's got one fur baby and one skin puppy.
Yeah, yes, yeah. I want to talk to you about your businesses and what you're doing with this amazing conference. So you've got Pop Your Business and Pop Your Career. Tell me about those businesses. How long have you been in business for?
Sure. So I started Pop Your Career in 2015. My background is in HR and I spent a lot of time in recruitment. So I sort of wasn't like, I'd done a lot of resume writing and selection criteria writing and stuff like that, just like on the side and really informally. But in 2015, we had not long gotten married. I'd decided that I was going to take the leap out of the job that I'd been in for 4 years and go and spend some time in the public service. And so for 3 years while I was in the public service, I side hustled with Pop Your Career, which was at the time still resume writing and selection criteria writing, and then with a little bit of career coaching. So after that 3-year period, I decided to go out on my own, which was really, really exciting. And it was less than 12 months after that I made the decision to shut down the resume and selection criteria writing arm of the business. It was doing very well, but I just felt like it didn't really light me up anymore. And one of the things that really underpins everything that I do in business is my top value of fulfillment. And I knew that it would be quite hypocritical of me to continue doing something that I really hated, when, you know, I'm sort of telling everyone else that they should be looking to feel more fulfilled by their work. So that was a big jump and left me just moving into coaching. I was doing that, and, you know, once I'd sort of gotten out on my own, I had this process of like coming out from behind my brand.
Yeah.
So prior to that, and when I was working as well, I was very much hidden behind lots of cheesy stock photos, and, you know, no one ever really saw me. And that was, I think, as well, you know, part of my own self-love and self-acceptance journey, to actually come out from behind the brand and go, hello, this is who I am. This is what I look like. You know, if you like it, great. But if you don't, that's also okay. And part of that experience was actually exhibiting at a local expo where, you know, I had very bright signs and, you know, like crazy outfit and all of this. And I noticed as people were walking past that they either had, you know, the big heart eyes where they were like, oh my God, what's this lady doing? Or I would see their face scrunch and they'd kind of go, oh, that's too much. And I realized that, you know, being quite polarizing in that way is actually really beneficial for business, because it means that I am actively magnetizing the people who I want to work with, and I'm repelling the people that, you know, aren't really my vibe. And so I did that. I was doing a lot of networking. I was meeting a lot of people, you know, especially around Canberra, but, you know, also in other states, doing speaking gigs and things like that. And what I found is that after a while, people started coming to me and saying, can you teach me how to do what you've done in your business in my business? And I was really conscious of the fact that, you know, I didn't want to just come out and say, oh, well, I'm a business coach now. I know that that happens a lot, and it really didn't feel right to me. I wanted to make sure that I had some experience and some runs on the board before I sort of, you know, attached myself to any title. So I always say, like, I started working with some business coaching clients incognito. I was sort of doing it under the radar just when people requested, and I got the opportunity to work with some really phenomenal businesses, started to get those runs on the board. And then around the time that COVID hit, I decided that that was time for me to officially launch Pop Your Business and, you know, sort of come out from that closet and say, you know, this is what I'm doing. And, you know, during COVID, I started by doing a lot of different programs and, you know, like online courses and things like that across a whole different range of areas in business, because I really wasn't sure, you know, whether I even wanted to niche, and if I did, where I wanted to niche. And look, the answer was there the whole time. It was around fulfillment. It was really around, you know, me helping my clients in business to get that business stuff under control so that they could really focus on the work that lights them up. And, you know, I found that I'm quite talented when it comes to things like systems, automation, outsourcing, and also harnessing creativity. So they are really the four things that I focus on in the business. And we offer one-to-one coaching. I say we because I now have a team. You know, offer one-to-one coaching. We also do, you know, still some online programs, workshops, and of course, as you mentioned, the Pop Your Business Conference.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that in a minute. One of the things when I'm listening to you, Bec, sharing your story and about discovering who you are and really owning who you are, that was kind of replicated in your business as well. So it's sort of same, but different process about coming out and really owning who you are. And that's what I see when I'm with you. And that's where you've helped me to sort of get those, like I said in the intro, the bits that I find hard in my business, the front end, easy peasy for me most of the time. The back end is hard stuff. So having a fresh set of eyes and a fresh set of eyes that you make really quick connections as well. One of the things I've loved about our coaching is the chats that we have, but that's about helping me to learn the bits I need to do. You'll do some of the bits that I don't want to learn, so that's also great. But it's also having that different perspective on things where you've really helped me to, with my membership last year, with this podcast. This was, when I was talking about how do I interview guests within my membership, and you said, well, why are you doing that? Why aren't you doing a podcast? And it's like, then we talked about it, and I think it was up and running a couple of weeks later. So that came about, and it's just having that fresh set of eyes and the things that you're good at in business that quite often business people are not good at. They're good at their stuff, but then often not good at all the behind the scenes stuff. So it's interesting just the process that you've been through personally and professionally. Now, tell us about the conference. This is super exciting. Pop Your Business Conference, and we'll have all the details in the show notes so people can, about Bec's business, but also about the conference. Tell us about the conference.
Yeah, so I love conferences. I am extremely introverted. I often joke that I'm a bit of a hermit. I absolutely thrived during COVID. I just got to close the front door and stay at home. But since I've been in business, I have really enjoyed going to conferences and meeting really inspiring people, whether they be the speakers or other members of the audience, getting to know people, building connections, getting ideas, learning, looking at the different ways that things could be done. And I've been to a number of different conferences around the country, and I was hearing this frustration from a lot of Canberra business owners that no one ever comes to Canberra, and there isn't really anything like that here. And so for people who are in Canberra, they're always having to travel. We're always having to go to Sydney or Melbourne or Brisbane or the Gold Coast or something like that to go to a conference. So I kind of got this idea in my head that it would be really great to put Canberra on the map. We've got an incredibly diverse, but also quite tight-knit business community here in Canberra. It would be a shame to, not have the opportunity to really show that off to the rest of the country, and to also show them what a fabulous place that Canberra can really be. And so we scheduled the first conference, and we had to move it a couple of times because of COVID. But we ended up going ahead with it in October of last year, so 2022. And it was just everything that I could have ever hoped and dreamed for. It was just absolutely amazing. We had gorgeous speakers. Just the whole event was so high vibe. And I really got this sense that the people in the room were getting so much from it, whether that be the specific learnings that they were getting from the speakers, or even just being in that energetic environment and, rubbing shoulders with people who know the challenges that you're facing, and, also understand the wins that you are having that maybe your other friends or family members who aren't in business just don't really get. And I think it's one of the most proudest things that I've ever done in my career, pulling off that conference. But I knew that I wanted it to be an annual event. So we are holding the second annual Pop Your Business Conference this October, 27th and 28th of October. We've secured a new venue, which is the Macula, Canberra, which is a beautiful heritage listed building with some really great event spaces. And we have got some superb speakers, both from Canberra and also around the country. So, of course, Catherine, you are one of our gorgeous speakers. So I believe I actually asked you at last year's conference and said, will you please speak next year? But we've got some other really, really, stellar people that are coming along, including Christina Carlson, who is the founder of Kiki K and also her new brand, The Dream Life Store. We've got Jade Warren from Hipster Mum and Small Business Growth Club. We have Anita Siak from Word Fetty, Claire Wood and her recent released book, Intentional Profit, and also Cherie Clonan, who is one of my absolute business idols. She is the CEO of the Digital Picnic. Overall, we've got, I think now 16 or 17 speakers that we're packing into our 2-day event. But we have really, I guess, put more of a focus this year on having more of like a workshop opportunity so that people can learn, but they can actually start to implement while they're in the room. We definitely didn't want it to be a 2-day event where we were just all sitting and being spoken at. So we got some really great feedback on this from last year, that people really loved those like actionable sessions. So we're bringing back more of that this year. We also have an evening networking event, which is great because it's an opportunity for everyone to schmooze with each other, but also with our speakers. And I've got to say, you know, we're working with a amazing group of sponsors this year as well. It's all just coming together so beautifully. And at last year's conference, I made the commitment that 2023 was going to be even better than our first. And I can already tell it's shaping up to be a really, really just exceptional event.
Oh gosh, Bec, I'm so excited for you, and I'm so excited for everybody to be part of that as well. Like, I was at the conference last year and it was amazing, the speakers. And like you said, just being in the room, listening and connecting. The big thing for me was about connecting. And a number of the people that I've met there have been guests on the pod. I've got to know them. And some of them have become guests on the podcast, which are awesome as well, and hearing their stories. And so the power of being there to focus on our business, to be able to improve and grow and connect our businesses is awesome. And I'm like honoured to be able to speak at the conference, and my little topics about getting out of your funk and getting back to being fabulous, and really helping people to identify what's holding them back and what's stopping them from delivering their message out into the world, because the world needs to hear each of our stories, and the world needs each of us in business to be able to deliver our businesses. So I'm really looking forward to hosting one of those workshops to really dive deep into that as well. So the details for the conference, can you just give the dates again? It's going to be in October.
27 and 28th of October. And that is here in Canberra at the beautiful Mercure Hotel.
Yeah, so the details will be in the show notes. And if anybody wants to come, there's absolutely accommodation, so you don't need to be based in Canberra. But if you would like to receive $100 off your ticket price, use the code Catherine, CATHERINE, and Bec will give you $100 off.
Absolutely,
so that's a bargain as well. And let me tell you, Bec is incredibly generous. I know that this is going to be even better than last year, and last year was fantastic. So, and some of the sneaky bits I've heard, get on board, folks. Absolutely get on board. So, Bec, that brings us, oh my gosh, we could talk forever and ever and ever.
We could.
So thank you so much for sharing your story, and can kind of see the little connections about how the parts of your life have come together. Good luck with being 40.
Thank you. I'll let you know how it goes.
And 50 and 80 and, beyond. Hugs and happiness to you, Bec. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Catherine.
And if anybody wants to, as always, sign up to the Happiness Hive newsletter. If you haven't done that already, pop to my website, which is happiness-hive.com, scroll down to the bottom, newsletter, and we'll also have Bec's details when we in the newsletter, but there's tips that come out weekly just for living your best life. So see you. Bye.
See you later.